Welcome to Miss Retro Reads. I'd like to share with you today the true story of Edna Gladney, who helped many people in Fort Worth, Texas. And this is a very dear story to me because it's about adoption and it's about my hometown, which is Fort Worth. So Edna Gladney was born in 1886 on January 22nd in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And her parents didn't have a very happy marriage. They were constantly bickering. And so she went to live with her grandmother. And her grandmother noticed at one point in her life that Edna was having trouble breathing. And this is something that would follow her all throughout her life. And so she decided that they would move. So they moved to Fort Worth, Texas. And around this time, Edna was of a marriageable age, and she was looking around for somebody she might marry. In her circle, there was a man named Adolf Eichmann, and he was of German heritage. She decided she would marry him. She wasn't terribly enthusiastic about it, but she figured it was a good match. So somewhere along the line, she met a man from Gainesville, Texas, who had moved to Fort Worth, named Samuel William Gladney. He was born in 1877. And he was working at a bank for a while, and he also was helping out his brother-in-law at Medallion Flour Milling Company. And he met Edna, and they seemed to hit it off right away, but she was engaged, and she wasn't sure. He had to go away right away on a trip, so he sort of courted her by letter, which I think is kind of cute. And then just 2 days before she was supposed to get married to Adolf, she eloped to Gainesville with Sam. And their marriage lasted until his untimely death in 1935. So Mr. Gladney was working for the flour company, and they moved around, and then eventually they got to Texas. Edna and Sam really wanted to have a family, but it didn't look like that was in the cards for them. So she tried to help other people as much as she could. There was something back then called poor farms, where they would dump people and they would just live on these farms. They would have children or handicapped people or transients. And it outraged Edna. So she got all her friends together and they decided to fix up these places. And eventually she decided that the orphans that were being abandoned, or if somebody didn't have enough money to take care of these babies, that they needed some place to go where somebody would take care of them and be separated from these adults on these farms. Today we have the problem where people are not open to life. Back then, people were open to life, but they didn't want to take care of the children, unfortunately. So there were quite a few, and you had Boys Town and so many places that had huge orphanages. She was asked to take over the Texas Children's Home. It was over $7,000 in debt when she took over in 1927. So she would go from door to door with a milk bottle, and she would ask people to just put some coins in it for milk for the babies. And she was constantly doing this all her life, constantly raising money for the babies. She had accepted the job without getting paid. Eventually, I think they gave her a very small salary, but she just did it for nothing. The baby home at 1315 West El Paso Street was donated and used for many years to house the babies. When they received the house, they had not given her any means to buy furniture, and her husband wasn't a very affluent man. He had trouble with bills, and but he decided that he would borrow on his life insurance policy to help her get enough money for some of the cribs and beds. And she went to thrift stores and borrowed and begged for the rest of it. And some of the babies that were not old enough to turn over yet, they put them in drawers of dresser drawers. Very cute. She was tireless in finding homes for these children, and she would often study the parents for a while and study the children to try and match them up so that they would be most fitted for each other. And she spoke of one boy that she placed, and she said, she noted with satisfaction later, graduated from high school, served in World War II, and married. He knows he has the finest father and mother in the world and is starting out in life well equipped to make a useful citizen. And she tried to place the babies right of way, like as soon as possible, whereas at the time they thought that they would wait until the child was like kind of grown up and then give it to a parent, which is kind of confusing because one bonds with whoever's one is with when you're a baby. At the time, if you were a foundling, somebody who they weren't sure who your parents were, it would be put on your license, and if you ever wanted to get a job, it would say that. So it was sort of discrimination towards somebody who didn't know who their parents were. And Edna thought this was terrible for the children who grew up with this. It wasn't their fault. So she tried to have the law changed, and it was changed. The HB 732 passed that May. So she was very instrumental in passing a bill that would get rid of this old law so that this wouldn't be public knowledge anymore as to somebody's past that they had no control over. But she wasn't able to really celebrate this because right when the bill had passed, her husband had had a heart attack on February 12th. And on St. Valentine's Day in 1935, he passed away in her arms. So he passed away with a lot of debts, and she was, just terribly upset that he had passed, but she also had to worry about what should she do now. Should she continue with running these homes for unwanted children, or should she do something else? Did she have enough money even to continue doing this? So she decided after some time that she would continue with this, and that to her, that the real assets were in human lives and not in dollars, in her own words. So she had her mom helping her in this and some relatives, which was nice because she was constantly running around trying to collect donations and figure out where the children's should go if they were going to good homes. So there was a man named Ralph Wheelwright. He was a New Yorker in his early 40s, and he and his wife, Fannie Lewis, came to Texas to the children's home, and they were looking for a child. He had served in World War I aboard a sub chaser, and he worked for a newspaper in Los Angeles. In 1930, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios hired him as an assistant director of publicity, and Ralph did some screenwriting too. Edna was able to find a little girl for them to adopt, and in so doing, Ralph got an idea that Edna's life would be a really good plot for a movie, for a film. And Edna said that it came at a great time because they were desperate for money at the home. And she said, "To think that your little girl is the means of your having helped a little organization that has struggled for over 40 years to come to our rescue just when we need it the most." They had just had a film in 1938 called Boys Town, starring Spencer Tracy, who had won an Academy Award as Father Flanagan, and Mickey Rooney was the tough kid in it. It was based in Nebraska. This had been an amazing hit, and so they wanted to follow it up with something similar. They decided a good name for the film would be Blossoms in the Dust. It was taken from a poem, The Street Children's Dance, by Mathilde Blind, 1841 to 1896. And Edna Gladney received $5,000 for the sale of her story, and she put it directly into the bank to help the children. They decided that Walter Pidgeon would play Sam, her husband, and that Edna would be played by Greer Garson. It was going to be black and white, and then with Greer Garson's red hair, they thought it would be amazing to see it in color. So if you'd like to see the movie, it's a good movie, and it's called Blossoms in the Dust, and it's in color. It came out in 1941. When they were making the film, the studio had about 100 infants and toddlers, and another 650 children ages from 2 to 8, the largest number ever used in a single MGM film. They required so much space for all the children that Greer Garson and Walter Pidgeon's dressing rooms had to be moved to another set. When World War II broke out, there were many soldiers who were passing by Fort Worth or stationed here because there was an air base here, that came in to see Edna, and they said, "Hey, you placed me as a baby years ago or as a child," and they called her Aunt Edna. And she said it was very nice to see all of them and how they had grown into such wonderful young men who were now protecting their country. And one interesting gentleman wrote, wanting an older child, "We sent history and pictures of a 14-year-old boy. The man was so impressed he wrote the most beautiful letter I have ever read in my life, offering this boy his home, his love, and his name. The boy was placed there, made splendid grades, and has been accepted by the father's family and all their friends as the man's heir." The comic actor Clem Bevins, who specialized in old coot roles in such films as Tall in the Saddle, Sergeant York, and The Yearling, adopted a daughter from Edna after 16 years of marriage and little hope of having a child. In the early May of 1943, Ralph wrote to Edna, "Mother of none and yet of so many." He was speaking of the son that she had helped him to adopt, Ralph Jr. We now know that there is no difference in adoption and natural parenthood. We feel the same. He ended with a sentiment every adoptive parent holds dear. A child is your child. It matters not at all how that child reaches your home. The way to your heart is the same. A few months later he wrote similarly. Both were born in our hearts. They simply came to us by different paths, God destined. In 1944, Edna was diagnosed with diabetes. She had become rather a large woman in her older age, and she often joked about it. "I laughed with Aunt Edna until I cried," Mary recalled, quickly adding that she never ridiculed or made fun of anyone except herself. Edna liked to tell the story of visiting a ranch where the owner asked if she'd like to ride. "Poor horse, I'd kill him," Edna said. She also took care of her staff and considered them family. When one lost her house in a Trinity River flood, Edna was there with money and supplies. Another night she received a phone call from the Fort Worth police that had picked up Robert, the baby home's very sweet and gentle driver and handyman, for vagrancy. He'd insisted on calling Edna, but no one believed he actually knew her. As Mary described it, Edna charged downtown to get him out, and the minute they heard her name, everyone started quaking in their boots. Edna Gladney took few prisoners. Eventually, with her declining health and not able to do as much work as she had been, she stepped down, and people wrote her many goodbye letters, and one of them was, "To us you are a blessing true, for you have made our gray skies blue," and wrote another, "You have had the opportunity presented to us few. You have been able to aid many to rise again after staggering on the road of life. Even children she placed wrote her poetry. Remember, we cried in our early years, we laid in our cribs, you dried our tears. But now we are older, we won't forget the smile on your face that was it." She was 74 years old when she finally retired. Edna Browning Gladney died just before noon on October 2nd, 1961. I'm so glad that even though she was from Milwaukee, she decided to help people in Fort Worth, Texas. And I know that the city is a better place because of all her work. I hope you have enjoyed this story of Edna Gladney, and if you want to, check out the movie Blossoms in the Dust. It's pretty accurate. I hope you have a great Wednesday, and join me next time.